So, we are continuing to take a look at some of the viewer submissions that you all have submitted over the past couple months now. I guess, yeah, this has been going a long time now. So, let's take a look at the AWS Cognito episode. And Lawrence, who's I see is here in the chat today, was mentioning that he's been basically following along and rebuilding a bunch of these projects from scratch. And let's see, he came across some weird error in following the AWS Cognito episode. Both the compiler and Webpack give no errors, and he deleted the Elm stuff directory, which is great. That's a good first step when you have weird problems, and then rebuild. And his console is getting a type error. Cannot read property : equals of undefined. Interesting. Yeah, cool. So I don't know if we'll actually be able to debug any of this stuff. Although, yeah, if you roll a graph, if you have the link to the code, if you want to share in the chat, we could try and see if I can recreate the same error right now. But let me jump over to my version of that project for the moment. And make sure I've got the latest stuff here. And let's see. This was a while back. I'm going to check the README and see how we have to build this. This thing keeps popping up. Sorry, I don't have time to read that right now, Adam. Okay, so in the README, we are supposed to run npm run build, and cool, it looks like he posted his own link in there. Let me just try building mine, and then we'll try out yours. So I'm going to delete the Elm stuff folder and try npm run build. That's running Webpack. And then, that's interesting. Then we run elm make. Oh, okay. I was confused for a second because I was thinking, wouldn't Webpack need the JavaScript from Elm? But I think that's not the case, because if we look in our Cognito HTML, we're pulling in Elm JavaScript and the Webpack JavaScript separately. Okay. And then how did we run this before? Did we just open Cognito, elmcognito.elm? Let's see if there's anything in the console. Bad request. Ah, right. And I changed the login keys after the stream, or the pool IDs. Okay, so my version seems to work. So let's try Lauren's and see. Hopefully I'm saying your name right. There's a menu which you're not seeing anymore. Okay, so let's try cloning this. And Cool. So here's his version. Let's open this up and see what's here. I guess today is going to be a lot of learning how to understand new Elm code bases that you're not familiar with. Okay, so here's the README. How to build, and let's see what he says in his message. Deleted Elm stuff to get a clean start. Okay. Run that, npm run watch. Okay. So I don't have an Elm stuff because I just cloned this. So I'm going to try running this. Then we're going to try the build. There's no build script, it says. Okay. So he changed the names in here and didn't update the README file. So let's try the watch version. npm run watch. Or, actually let's try the dev server. Webpack. Okay, so presumably we need to install the npm modules. Which I partly remembered, but also because the npm script is missing commands. And while that's building, this colon equals makes me think that the problem is likely related to the JSON decoding. I am assuming we have JSON decoding in here in main.elm. If we don't, interesting. It looks like we don't have anything related to JSON decoding, which is even more baffling because there is a function called colon equals in the JSON decoding core package. So that would have been my first guess to try looking at. And the steps I would usually go through are first look at this compiled JavaScript. Oh, interesting. I'm noticing that the stack trace here is coming from the myapp.js, which is the JavaScript built by Webpack, which contains the AWS SDK and is not related at all to the Elm code. So that's an interesting thing. All right, so let's finish trying this out and see if we can reproduce the problem that Lawrence is seeing. You need an appropriate loader to handle this. Type unexpected token in entry.js, source/entry.js. And does it tell me where? Line 50, column 65. If, okay, that needs to be on separate lines. And I think my Atom plugin just reformatted the whole file. Okay, let's start that again. Cannot resolve file or directory config. Okay, and that, I think on the stream I maybe told people not to add that to their Git repo. Yeah, so the config file is git ignored. So let me copy mine. Elm AWS Cognito source/config. Okay, so that was my config. All right, so let's start this. Whoops. Let's start this one more time. All right, our bundle is now valid, and it looks like it's being served on port 3000. Ooh, interesting. Never seen this dev server before. Okay, so let's run our Elm Cognito HTML. And console failed to load the server resource. Oh, okay. So there's no dist/myapp.js. I'm going to open another terminal tab. Workspace. Debugging. Yeah, there's no dist folder. Where did things get compiled to? Or what is Webpack doing? I guess we need to run that and run the watch script. Oh yeah, okay. So I'm guessing this isn't actually doing the Webpack building. So let's try npm run update. Okay, and that created our dist folder. Cool. Now let's refresh this. And it says both user pool ID and client ID are required. Okay. Well, that seems okay. Yeah, so I don't seem to be able to reproduce the error. Oh, it looks like in chat, you are no longer seeing problems with this. Fun. Yeah, so yeah, my first thought here was that this was maybe related to a problem with JSON decoding, and there are still a couple weird cases in the Elm compiler where if you have accidentally recursive function calls, you can get weird compiler output that it doesn't warn you about, and like that, those types of things are still getting improved. So that was my first thought after seeing that he already tried clearing the Elm stuff directory. But now that I'm actually looking at the stack trace here, the myapp stuff is all related to the JavaScript code and not to the Elm code at all in here. So, so the place to look would have been in the entry file, first of all. Maybe there was a typo somewhere where one of these colons had like an equals next to it. So yeah, if there are still problems, I would be curious to see what you find out, but it sounds like things might be working for you now. All right. Well, that was a short little lesson on debugging JavaScript code in Elm compilation. Yeah, I mean, I quite often, like I usually would say just dig in here and try to read the source code if you can and try to understand what's happening. I've done that a lot of times, like the JavaScript promises library was one that I did on when I was working on a client project about a year ago, and I used to do that a lot when I worked on Android mobile projects. Just dig into the Android source code, and there are some weird bugs you used to find in the Android framework. All right. Well, let's move on then to our next submission, which was also for the AWS Cognito project. And here's a PR where someone was setting up Webpack. Oh, cool. And it looks like this is the same or it looks like this particular change actually was is something that Lorenz pulled into his branch, so we just actually saw a lot of this with the Webpack scripts from NPM and the updated README with how to run all this stuff. And a few small changes. Oh, I see. This PR is actually setting it up so that you can directly refer to Elm files from JavaScript, and Webpack will do the compilation. So here you can see that our entry point JavaScript is just requiring an Elm file, and then the Webpack config is set up so that whenever it needs to import an Elm file, it uses the Elm Webpack loader to actually use the Elm compiler to compile it to JavaScript. Cool. That is really cool. I am actually not going to merge this particular PR because for most of my, especially these small experimental projects, I like to keep the development environment set up as simple as possible. But this is a really cool reference if you're doing a real long-term project to hook this up if you're using Webpack and want it to integrate more smoothly with Elm. And I believe, yes, here's another link that someone suggested in a comment. And, oops, looks like my internet just cut out. So let me restart the stream. All right. Let's see if things are back now. Cool. All right. Looks like the stream is back up. Yes. So I was saying this is another tutorial that someone linked to me in the comments on the AWS episode, giving kind of a step-by-step of how to configure Webpack. So I haven't actually looked through this, but it's a nicely formatted tutorial page. If anyone tries this out, let me know if it's a good resource or not. But someone suggested it and it sounded like they had used it in the past already. And let me drop that link in the chat for anyone that wants it now, but I'll include it in the YouTube links later on as well. Let's see if I can find the right place to drop this tab. I feel like I need more than 2 monitors to do this properly. Cool. So yeah, thanks again for everyone who's been submitting those issues and those pull requests. So, yes. So now, actually we had a bunch of stuff on this next episode, this space simulation episode. So, why don't we take a quick 2-minute break before we jump into that episode and all the comments and updates from that one. So I'm going to grab a drink of water, and we'll be back in a minute or two.